been a very long time.
Couple of weeks. I was working the whole time though, I wasn't just
slacking off.
I made a very intricate doll. Put it together in a very strange way. You'll see what I'm talking about when you see the doll. When it's clothing time, should I do like super chill with like a sweatshirt and shorts? Or should I do something extreme and elaborate? And obviously I went with extreme and elaborate, so it took a really long time. Anyway, I hope that you enjoy it. I really like how it turned out. I learned a lot as usual. We'll be moving on to Super Sculpey or epoxy sculpt, something that's not as maddening as a $5 bucket of air dry clay that crumbles even when you are
following tutorials that say if you layer the air dry clay, it will stay and it'll build and it'll be fantastic. It didn't do that.
Anyway, long intro for me. Let's get into it. So my idea is to make this kind of like you would make a paper mache doll. These are gonna be the wrists and the ankles. And then inside I put all of these wire bits for fingers, and I put the aluminum foil to fill out the shapes and wrapped it with tape. So now that all the pieces are wrapped up with tape and have little hooks, I will now add the air dry clay. So I make this clay super flat and thin so that I'll be able to wrap it and layer it and smooth it all together. This was very, very tiny and meticulous work. And after I get this thumb done, I only have 9 more teeny tiny fingers to go. So I was shown that if you build up your air dry clay, it will stay longer and it will not be as fragile and crumbly. So I made these pieces very thin so that I could build up on the air dry clay. So now I have thin air dry clay to go on this piece of leg. This is a shin and a calf. And it was purposely very, very skinny so that I could add more and more clay and not make it get too bulky. Somehow they still end up being extra slim though and super long, so this doll, even though it wasn't my intention, does have exaggerated limbs and neck. And now all of our body parts have their base layer of clay, and that will allow me to add their simple shapes that will become their features. Let's start at the toes. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 toes. Make sure and wet the air dry clay if you're going to add anything to it. It creates kind of a sticky, gluey surface and helps with smoothing and attaching any pieces. In my attempt to try and layer, I put some ribs. I put a rib cage on here. I know that there's going to be a lot of stuff on top. This is very flat still. It's still very 2D, and I'm going to need to add curve of the back and some curves in the front. For the second layer, I started adding some juiciness onto my thighs. The smoothing for this was pretty easy since it was just kind of one shape. I also wanted to add a little more rounding to the back of this head. Now it is time to give this skeleton some meat, starting with the breastists. I really wanted to give this sculpture some natural hanging boobies, which was more difficult than I thought it was going to be because every time I tried to smooth them, the shape got stranger and stranger, and they got closer together, and then I realized they weren't attached in the middle, so we had to smooth inside there so they got further apart. Eventually we ended up with something that looks like this. I will end up adding more to the sides. But let's move on and give her some belly meat. So this was a strange shape for this doll. I really have never tried to add onto a doll like this before. So her belly ends up kind of looking a little bloated. We'll worry about that later. Now let's get some features on this face. The first thing I wanted to start with were some brow ridges. This is a very flat face. And we also need a bridge for this nose. Let's do the little bulbous part, and this part is actually going to be the chin I wanted this doll to kind of have a little bit of a chin and not just a roundish bottom part. So now we have to smooth this all on, get the nose in, try not to use all the clay by smoothing and still leave a little bit of these features left after everything has been smoothed. Next thing we add once this nose has been smoothed is the top lip. So we get a piece of our clay and very delicately try to move it into place. Smoothing it on and trying to keep its shape is difficult. This ended up being a very smiley face because of the way the cheekbones and the lips shaped on. Stick on those cheekbones I mentioned, and the very last thing that the front of this face is missing at least is the bottom lip. So let's stick that bad boy on there. Honestly, think it looks best right here before I start smoothing it, but then it wouldn't stick on. It would probably just fall right off, so we have to smooth it. And it got kind of smashed together, so I had to cut with the razor some of that mouth inside out. Here it is dry. I know it's hard to see it, but it cracked a little bit on the back of the head, of course. Air dry clay! Now it's time to hopefully make this doll a little less creepy with the addition of some eyeballs. First we put the balls in, sit in there perfectly, and then we have to put in the top eyelid. We've got little tiny snakes that we just curve on the top of both of these. One of them's a little bit long. Then we add the bottom eyelid. And our doll is no longer eyeless. Once again, I thought it looked better before it was smoothed, but once the lids are smoothed in place, this is how it looks. One eye is obviously much bigger than the other one. It's okay. All right, this head is really coming together. Last thing we need to do is throw on some quick ears. We have to sculpt them on the head, obviously, because they're too teeny tiny to do anything else. I'm glad I have these little dotting tools for little teeny ear things. Ears, we have two. Let's move on to sculpting the body. I'm gonna start adding more clay to fill out this back part and the front part, give her some hips, a waist, a little curve on the top of her back. And then we naturally move down to the gluteus maximus. Gotta fill that bad boy up. I'd like her to be able to sit down. But this whole body is still very thin and slight, and that's not what I was going for. So we're gonna have to add a lot more clay to fill it out. Let's do that in fast motion. I feel like 95% of sculpting is just smoothing things into place and then watching them crack when they dry, of course. I'm gonna be messing with that for hours off camera. So now everything is magically dry. Yes, there's a big crack in the tummy. I'm gonna use these little tiny jump rings to connect all of these limbs together. So it's almost gonna be like a necklace made of doll parts, which I wasn't really sure that I was gonna like. I didn't know what to expect doing it this way. Obviously, it's not going to be able to hold a pose because it's going to be connected by little jump hoops, but for some reason, the way that they hang is actually really fascinating to me. It's kind of creepy in a really cool way. She's kind of limp like a dead body, and she always catches herself with her elbows like this. It's a very strange, kind of uncanny valley doll effect. I really like it. With everything built, it's finally time for decorating. We're gonna get some skin tone together here by using some sugary cereal acrylic paint. And then combine that with some warm sunshine. Actually, way too much warm sunshine. I'm gonna be spending a long time pulling this back from orange, but we'll skip that. And magically be ready to start adding color to the doll. I'm sure you will not be surprised to learn that this was the most relaxing part of this entire doll making process. Just getting to paint and not have to worry about shape, not have to worry about teeny tiny little things that I can barely see, connecting to other teeny tiny little things I can barely see, not having to worry about things cracking and how to fix it, and getting mad at myself for still using this cheap air dry clay. I feel like her body looks pretty cool like this, even though I don't know how to do ball joints, and maybe I never will. Maybe this is my new thing, and maybe this is going to be unique to me. I don't know. Anyway, she's painted. Let's move on to the next thing. Blushing. We're going to blush these fingers, blush all of our little nooks and crannies to give her some life. I'm also procrastinating. I'm very nervous about painting on top of this face. Once this paint gets on there, that Posca does not come off. It's worse for the plastic dolls, but the acrylic paint is more forgiving. Moment of truth. I'm going in with the lips, and I went with a very dark red. I feel like I try to do neutral most of the time, so this seemed like a good choice, something different. And since I already have the lips sculpted, it didn't seem like it was going to be too daunting just to put the color on the lips that were already there. Since these were quick and easy, we went straight into eyebrows. And as I'm putting these eyebrows on here, I'm thinking these look really thin. And I remember, I'm supposed to put a soft layer of pastel underneath here to fill in the eyebrows before I do the acrylic. I don't know, the pastel didn't really grab onto this doll as well as it does on the plastic dolls, but I think I should have done that first. So we'll switch now over to some eyelashes. I've already done the right-handed eye because it's easier, and so now I have to flip it to do this eye, and I'm realizing that there's quite a ridge on this eyelid, making it hard to make these lashes look like they're actually attached to this eye. So we've got it on nicely, and I'm going to go ahead, now that it looks good, and cover everything up, make it really dark, just mess up everything I've just done. There we go. I end up messing with this a lot off camera later. It's pretty much like everything else I do. I mess it up, and then I have to look at it for hours and figure out how I can make it look better. But at least it didn't get as crazy as some of my other eyelashes. I did remember that Q-tips grab this soft pastel a lot better and transfer the color on so much better than like a paintbrush would. So I'm gonna go with blue with these eyes. With the dotting tool and a little black Posca blood, I put in our little iris. Nope, irises are the color part. The pupil. I put the pupils in, and our eyes are done. Just kidding, we can never forget the eye shinies, so throw a couple of those in there, and now we're on to the hair. I made this girl a wig cap with some tape and some cellophane because she is actually going to be wearing a wig, so she has to have a wig made for her. You'll see what I mean in a minute. Okay, so what I'm making for her is a powdered wig. So one of those white wigs that's really high. Ow, burning myself on some hot glue, of course. There's gonna be a lot of hot glue for all of this stuff. A lot of sewing with hot glue again. This wig is gonna end up being really tall. She actually looks pretty cute with it just like this, and makes me think that maybe if I wanted to do a short hair doll, making a wig first would be a good idea. To create the voluminous part of this wig, the tall top that gets decorated in these periodical pieces, I'm going to use this little green poof ball and wrap the poof ball with this white yarn to make it really high and look like it is a big pile of hair coiffed on top of her head. You can see a little bit of the green through this, but once I squish it all together, it should be completely uniform and covered. And then I'm going to add little curls, like ringlets, with the rest of the white on the outsides. Even though this yarn is super cheap, it's the perfect yarn to use for this because it kind of falls in ringlets if you just let it hang and twirl in on itself. Once this poof is covered, I can attach it onto the original wig piece right on top, just like this. And then we can add all of the long pieces that hang down just with some hot glue. Let them fall down, twirl on themselves, and hang down beautifully. So now we have our wig to go to the ball, and we need a dress, a ball gown in fact. So I'm going to use this globe to help me shape the giant dome skirt of this dress. I thought about making a wire frame like, you know, ball gown dresses can have, like a hoop skirt, and this just seemed easier. So I'm going to use aluminum foil and tape. And then it's gonna hit me that if I do paper mache on here and maybe on her neck as well, it could hold the whole doll up. So if it's strong enough, I can just stick her in there and she can stand up because the skirt is strong enough. So here she is. She's got her waist paper mache. That's to hold up her midsection, give this bottom skirt a little bit more support. But I also need to do her neck piece. Now we have to cut in so I can fit her in there. And remember, her booty is very big, so I end up having to do a very long slice just to open this up and let her in. Eventually we got it large enough that we squeezed her through, and look at her now. She's in her dress, she's being held up, her neck is secure. I could have just stopped right here and painted this, and it probably would have looked really good, but no. Here's how she looks with her hair. I thought about putting some shoulders in. I don't end up using this aluminum foil, but her hair looks so great. I could just be done right here, right? We're done. Yeah, no, my brain will never let me take the easy way out. We are going to have to make this a lavish ball gown, so we're going to start with some trim at the bottom that is lace, of course. Don't worry about those squishies, you'll see them later in a future video. So after pulling out all of my materials, I realized that this crepe paper is going to be perfect for doing a lot of the frills and the little details that would be impossible to do without having to sew a bunch of fabric. So let's add this. Then lace again, of course. And then, of course, some more crepe paper. I'm going to do crepe paper sleeves. This ribbon is going to be some color on the top of this dress. 1, 2, skip a few. I didn't do much off camera except for just add the sleeves. And it's just crepe paper really wrapped around her arms. The only thing that's actual fabric is this skirt part, and it was very thick, so it ends up ballooning a little bit more in the back than I wanted it to. But now we're gonna do some of this hot pink to make frills all through the front on the part of the dress that is open. Of course, we have to get the other side with the hot pink crepe paper, and we just have to add her decoration that goes on her wig, and then she is ready for her photo shoot. So before making this doll, I didn't realize that this style of dress and powdered wig fashion is called Rococo. It almost made me want to name her Rococo because I had not heard of that before, and I thought it was really cute. Her dress and her coloring is very much like a dessert. Her hair even looks like whipped cream on top. My kid said she looked like a cake, so I'm going to name her Claire after an eclair dessert. She'll be Claire Chaud, because a Chaud pastry is one that puffs up and makes a hollow shell, just like her dress. This doll was a journey, and you all came on it with me, and I appreciate that. I hope you like her as much as I do. I put a lot of work into this, and I was not letting myself back down and do something easy. I had a vision. It wasn't maybe this pink, but it was definitely this extravagant. Sometimes you have to work with the materials that you have on hand, and I just happen to have a lot of crepe paper on hand. I gave her a little manicure off camera and some rings, of course, because, you know, she's in a ball gown and she has to have some beautiful jewelry, some tiny little pearls, a little flower piece. Thank you guys so much for watching this week. I hope that the next few videos will be just as good. Feel free to click on another video after this if you are interested. Otherwise, I'll see you next week. Thank you so much, and it's time for your treat.